Three historic Kirk moments happened in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, but not the way J.J. Abrams did it. Three historic James T. Kirk, Paul Wesley moments happened in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds Season 2, and all of them occurred very differently than how they played out in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek 2009. Strange New Worlds is set in Star Trek's prime timeline, whereas Abrams' reboot takes place in an alternate reality dubbed the Kelvin timeline. It's worth noting that Star Trek: Strange New Worlds events occur in 2259 and 2260. Just after Star Trek 2009, this main story takes place in 2258 in the alternate Kelvin timeline. Because Star Trek: Strange New Worlds takes place in Star Trek's prime timeline, the events of the prequel series about Captain Christopher Pike's Anson Mount USS Enterprise are canon. Paul Wesley's Lieutenant James T. Kirk and Ethan Peck's Lieutenant Spock are the younger versions of the Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock played by William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, respectively, in Star Trek, the original series. Chris Pine's Star Trek movie, Captain Kirk, Zachary Quinto's Spock, and their Starship Enterprise crew live different lives in a separate universe. As J.J. Abrams' Star Trek is a big-budget Hollywood blockbuster, the events of Chris Pine's Captain Kirk's life are decidedly more dramatic than similar Kirk moments in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds' prime timeline canon. How Kirk met Uhura in Strange New Worlds compared to J.J. Abrams' Star Trek LT, James T. Kirk canonically steps aboard the USS Enterprise for the first time in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 6, Lost in Translation. James's first action after meeting his brother, LT Sam Kirk, Dan jean-luc, is to visit the Enterprise's port galley bar. There, Jim notices a distressed ensign Nyota Uhura, Celia Rose Gooding, who assumes Kirk is there to hit on her. Moments later, experiencing a nightmarish vision, it's Uhura who hits Kirk by accident. Despite getting slugged by the ensign, James helps Nyota uncover the secret of her waking fears, and a decades-long friendship is forged. J.J. Abrams' Star Trek played Kirk's first meeting with Nyota Uhura, Zoe Saldana, very differently. Kirk and Uhura met in a bar in Iowa in 2285 when Nyota was a Starfleet Academy cadet. Kirk hit on Uhura but was shot down. There was also violence involved, as Uhura's fellow cadets decided to get physical with the Iowa farm boy. Kirk was outnumbered in his bar fight and lost, but he took them all on valiantly, or Jim was foolhardy. A few years later, when he was also enrolled at Starfleet Academy, Kirk dated Uhura's Orion roommate, Gayla Rachel Nichols. How Kirk met Captain Pike in Strange New Worlds compared to J.J. Abrams' Star Trek: Christopher Pike in the simplest way possible in Star Trek: Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 6, Lost in Translation. Kirk simply entered Pike's ready room and introduced himself to the captain of the Enterprise. James had just been promoted to first officer of the USS Farragut, and he beamed aboard the Enterprise to learn the finer points of being a number one from LT. Commander Una Chin Riley, Rebecca Romijn, Pike's first officer. Kirk and Pike's first meeting was just a friendly handshake. J.J. Abrams conjured a very different relationship between Kirk and Captain Pike, Bruce Greenwood. After LT George Kirk's, Chris Hemsworth, tragic death at the start of Star Trek 2009, James grew up without a father. Captain Pike became Kirk's ersatz father figure, and Chris counseled Jim after his bloody bar fight sparked by Kirk meeting Uhura. Pike, who admired Kirk's father, dared James to enter Starfleet Academy. At the end of Star Trek 2009, Pike passed the captaincy of the Enterprise to Kirk. In Star Trek Into Darkness, Pike was murdered by Khan Noonien Singh, Benedict Cumberbatch, spurring Kirk to seek revenge for the death of his mentor and father figure. Captain James T. Kirk is one of the most iconic characters in the Star Trek universe. From his bold decisions and daring heroics to his emotional depth and complex relationships, Kirk has been a central figure in shaping the franchise's narrative. With Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, a series that focuses on the adventures of Captain Pike and the USS Enterprise before Kirk took command, the creators have found a way to weave Kirk's presence into the show while maintaining its own distinct identity. Rather than leaning on the alternate universe Kirk of J.J. Abrams' reboot films, Strange New Worlds takes a more nuanced and grounded approach, giving fans new perspectives on classic Kirk moments. Here are 3 key historic Kirk moments reimagined in Strange New Worlds, done in ways that differ from the larger-than-life portrayal in Abrams' Star Trek films. 1. The no-win scenario revisited. One of the most defining aspects of Captain Kirk's character is his famous solution to the Kobayashi Maru, the no-win scenario. In the Abrams' Star Trek 2009 reboot, Kirk's handling of the Kobayashi Maru is portrayed with a cheeky, almost reckless bravado, as he smugly reprograms the simulation to ensure his victory, much to the disdain of the overseeing officers. In Strange New Worlds, we see a more thoughtful exploration of the concept of the no-win scenario through Kirk's character, albeit in a less direct way. Rather than portraying the younger Kirk as someone who simply outsmarts the system with arrogance, Strange New Worlds delves into the emotional and psychological weight of such impossible decisions. When Kirk appears in the series, he is still a tactical genius, but the show emphasizes his underlying fear of losing his crew and the ethical dilemmas that come with leadership. This is particularly evident in Season 2 of Strange New Worlds, when Kirk is faced with a mission that seems destined for failure. Instead of breezing through it with smug confidence, Kirk approaches it with gravitas, fully understanding the consequences of his choices. This Kirk is more mature than the reckless cadet we saw in Abrams' film, offering a more faithful rendition of the character's depth. It's a subtle yet powerful nod to the Kobayashi Maru that gives Kirk's character a more layered, introspective feel. 2. The Kirk-Spock dynamic, rivalry turned friendship. One of the central dynamics in Star Trek has always been the friendship between Kirk and Spock. Abrams' films depict the two as initially antagonistic, with their friendship growing only after several confrontations. In Star Trek 2009, Kirk and Spock's relationship begins with animosity, with Spock viewing Kirk as impulsive and undisciplined, while Kirk sees Spock as overly logical and unemotional. Strange New Worlds takes a different route. In this series, we see early interactions between Kirk and Spock that are more collaborative than confrontational. When Kirk is introduced to the crew, there is mutual respect between the two rather than the antagonism we saw in the reboot films. While they don't immediately become best friends, there's a recognition of each other's strengths. Kirk values Spock's logical approach and his ability to keep cool under pressure, while Spock respects Kirk's intuition and decisiveness. This more respectful dynamic gives fans a new perspective on the evolution of their iconic friendship. Instead of beginning with rivalry, Strange New Worlds shows that Kirk and Spock's relationship was built on cooperation from the start, with their camaraderie gradually deepening over time. It's a refreshing take on their dynamic, paying homage to the original series while avoiding the heightened drama of Abrams' version. 3. Kirk's leadership in crisis. The weight of command. Another quintessential Kirk moment in the Star Trek lore is his decision-making during a crisis. Abrams' version of Kirk is often portrayed as a brash, impulsive leader who defies orders and jumps into action without always considering the consequences. This impulsivity is part of what defines his character in the reboot films, where Kirk's instincts frequently save the day, even when they clash with Starfleet protocol. Strange New Worlds takes a more grounded approach. When Kirk assumes command in critical situations, we see a more calculated and cautious leader. This Kirk isn't just about rushing in headfirst. He carefully weighs the consequences of each action, understanding that lives are at stake. The show highlights Kirk's development as a leader, showing that while he still possesses the boldness and intuition that fans associate with the character, he also recognizes the burden of command. In one memorable episode, Kirk is faced with a choice between risking his crew's safety or abandoning a mission that could prevent a greater catastrophe. Unlike the Abrams version, who might have immediately chosen the most dramatic course of action, this Kirk takes a moment to reflect, showing the emotional toll of such decisions. It's a more human portrayal of Kirk, one that emphasizes the complexity of leadership rather than just the action hero bravado.